Hey everyone, yes, the rumors are true. I listened to Coldplay's entire discography. This happened over my winter break from school, and I don't know why I did it. I was on a road trip, and I thought, you know what? Let me do this. Let me figure out, are they washed? Did they get worse? Did their music get worse? Like, what was with this switch up? Or was this always the kind of musical trajectory that they were on? I want to answer all these questions and no more. I recorded a video that was really long of me talking about it, but I didn't like how it turned out. I was editing it and I was reading my notes too much, not just going off my own yip yap, so I am redoing it. And I don't know why I'm choosing now because I just came back from the gym, which is why I look a little more peachy, but why not? I always enjoyed Coldplay from what I heard in general. The Scientist, Viva La Vida. Fun fact, I used to think that was sung by Usher when I was like 6. But you know, they're classic songs that a lot of people know and generally know them by. And honestly, before doing this deep dive, I hadn't really heard a hit single. It turns out that's not true, but I thought I hadn't heard a hit single by Coldplay since like Hymn for the Weekend or something like that. So going into this, I thought probably I would like their older music better. I personally like a lot of rock music, so you know, hearing that their earlier music was rock, you know, I just kind of automatically thought I would like that. I did know A Rush of Blood to the Head. I knew a couple songs besides the Scientist and Clocks, which are great songs, but I knew some other songs besides that. So getting into it, I did the albums in a interesting order. I went earliest to latest and then second earliest to second latest, and like that until it was in the middle. So I first listened to Parachutes, and this is a solid album. It's not my favorite. I will give a ranking of them. Yeah, so as I'm editing this, I realized Parachutes album cover is not a moon. Guys, it is not a moon. I I think I say that it is at some point in this video. It is not. It is a globe. It's a globe. I didn't know that. I Anyways, my bad for when I say it's a moon. It has really solid songs like Don't Panic, Shiver. I mean, I don't like Spies. I don't get it. It's fine. Sparks, obviously, and Yellow, duh. So, you know, it has some good staple Coldplay songs on there. I will just say that it's not very, like, it's pretty repetitive lyrically, and it also doesn't just, it's a good album, but it doesn't feel very distinctly Coldplay. I could see, I guess it's very obvious who their influences are, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But what I like about some other albums that I'll talk about is that it feels more distinctly them and that they've developed in a certain way. That obviously wouldn't be there for their debut album. But it's a solid album, and it has Yellow on it. That's a great song, so. And then I listened to their most recent album called Moon Music, right? And so aesthetically going into this, I mean, yeah, it's like a moon on the cover, it's rainbowy. I don't know, it seemed just hopeful, like positive, but maybe relaxed music was the vibe I was getting just from the aesthetic of looking at it. And I didn't know anything about this album. I didn't think I had heard any songs from this album. I didn't recognize any by name. It's not bad, and I will say, I did this a while ago, but even recently, the song We Pray, which I did like the concept of the song, and it is probably the most catchy song from the album. And I do like, just kind of throughout their whole discography, just the range of features that they have. Like, this was a lot of rap on it. There are other ones with like Selena Gomez, BTS, Rihanna. They were gonna do one with Johnny Cash, which I learned while doing this whole thing before he passed. But I like that about them. I like their diversity in that way. But I didn't really gel with any of these other songs. There was a lot of la la la's, and I realized I think that just is Coldplay they just end up really liking to do that. And I guess it has to be a stylistic choice. I don't think it's a laziness choice per se, or in need of a rhyme, though they do rhyme it in one song. But I think that's interesting that they've just developed this love for using that. Interesting. I don't really like it. There was one song I particularly didn't like. That was I am, like lowercase I, like iCarly, then like capital A, capital A, capital M. I don't know what it stands for, but I don't know if it was just my phone I was listening or my headphones, but the way that it comes in from the pre-chorus into the chorus, I really despise it. It feels like it's coming in, like it feels like the lyrics are coming in on a beat, and then the beat, like the instruments are coming in on like a half beat, and it's trying to do like a and I don't like how it was executed. That has come to my conclusion. I was very perturbed by this. I listened to it over and over trying to figure out what I don't like about it. I don't like it. So overall, Moon music is just meh to me. I wouldn't go back and listen to any of the songs on it, even if We Pray sometimes gets in my head. The next up, I listened to A Rush of Blood to the Head, and I was pretty familiar with a couple of songs, as I mentioned on this album. The Scientist, Clocks, A Rush of Blood to the Head, the song, and In My Place. Yeah, I was familiar with those. And after listening to it, I do really enjoy this album. It is a great album in my opinion. I've seen some people online, you know, as I was doing this, say, oh, this album, you know, maybe it was good at the time, it doesn't really hold up. I don't know, some stuff like that. I still think it's really good, and I think it really like, it's Coldplay coming into more of their own, and then with their storytelling. I feel like really from the debut album of theirs that they developed on every front, honestly, especially, and honestly, Chris Martin's vocals, and that's something that I liked seeing his evolution of, and something that I, you know, for Moon music, it feels like they're relying so much on auto-tune in some parts, and I don't like what they do a lot more recently with Chris Martin's vocal production, because he's an amazing singer and he developed into such an amazing performer, and yada yada yada. I don't know about some vocal production choices now, but then, and especially in this album, I really liked it. And it's something I noticed in the debut album. His vocals weren't bad, but, you know, now Chris Martin singing it would definitely be better, especially in a song like Shiver, where going into more falsetto or like head voice for a guy. The lighting just changed. Or a head voice. I think he could execute that, even just if he sang it when he made this album, Rush Blood to the Head. And what I like too about this album is that the singles, or I don't know if they were singles at the time, I really don't know, but The Scientist and Clocks are great songs, but these other songs also hold their own too, even, you know, without the context of those other songs. I mean, I really like A Whisper. Amsterdam is a beautiful closer. It's honestly my favorite Coldplay song, I think. I've been trying to teach myself piano, and I taught myself that on piano. I'm not tuning it like he did it some, so it sounds a little off, but it's a great song. And this is just a really great album, and definitely will be high up there in my ranking. I also just liked, you know, Coldplay throughout their whole discography talk about love a lot. And I like that this, you know, I mean, it talks about love and feelings of that, obviously, but it also talked about these cycles of self-destruction and also self-awareness to that self-destruction, but kind of being in that pit of it. And I like that. I mean, I just think that's a really interesting theme to explore, and they did it in a way that wasn't very contrived. So I enjoyed that. Next up was Music of the Spheres. Turns out, I didn't know this even after I listened to this album and looked up whatever. I guess Music of the Spheres is a phrase. And I didn't know that. So more credit given to them than when I heard this. I thought, okay, like, I don't really know. Like, what do they mean by Music of the Spheres? Like, I don't get it. But it's a real thing. Okay, whatever. I'll give them credit for that. Again, I had no clue how this album sounded. It seemed, you know, very much in line with the aesthetic of the previous album, or not their previous album, but with Moon Music, their most recent album. So Moon Music seemed almost like an extension of that theme, but then again, they're always doing stuff with the moon and space. I mean, even like parachutes. Also to note, their albums so far have just been about the same length, like 42 minutes, 44 minutes, which I think is interesting. I like that it's a bit shorter. But then, then it kind of shows when an album feels more like, oh my gosh, this album feels so long, like I can't wait for it to be over, but it's the same length as another album of theirs. But getting into it, so talking about the album titles, a lot of them are emojis. So one of them is like the Saturn emoji, the other one is, sorry, I have to look. The other one is Earth emoji, the infinity symbol, is it not here? Oh, heart, a heart, and then like sparkles. So interesting aesthetic for this album, and I really wasn't vibing with it. Especially, I mentioned the vocal production. I really didn't like it for Chris Martin's vocals on this album. I also think it has arguably, in my opinion, the worst feature of theirs, which is with Selena Gomez. Look, I love her. She was my favorite artist when I was a kid. She was my Disney queen. And I still love her. Like, I think she's great. I did not like this duet of theirs. Okay, again about the vocal production. Even on this song, it wasn't Chris Martin's I disliked. I really disliked how they put her vocals.
We had a kind of love, I thought that it would never end.
All the storms we weathered, everything that we went through.
And when everything was going wrong,
it felt so jarring in contrast to Chris Martin's. He didn't feel so overtly auto-tuned, and then hers felt so polished that I could just like that contrast of theirs. I mean, it's supposed to be a duet, so that vocal just editing contrast I really didn't like. Also, in their more recent albums, the lyrics become a bit, for me, I like lyrics, I like seeing lyrics, I like reading them. For me, it becomes a bit weird, a bit different than their lyrics in their older work. For example, in Higher Power? No, in Humankind, they say, quote, "I've heard the strangest song a DJ a star away." And I'm like, I don't really get that. But I don't know. That's something I think I care more about than maybe other people care about. I know, like my boyfriend, he doesn't care about the lyrical content of the song as much than, how it makes you feel or something. So that's more me. Again, I really didn't like Beautiful, which is one not spelled how you think it is. It's spelled like Beautyful. I really hate the vocal production on this song. I think a lot of my gripe with more probably recent works of theirs is their just production in general, perhaps, and the vocal production too, a bit more in some ways, but just the production, I don't know. So yeah, that was my least favorite album of theirs. After that, I listened to X and Y, and I kind of thought that this would be a bit more experimental. It seemed a bit different aesthetically than anything that they had done before. And this is when I thought they would probably start leaning more into that pop sound. I just know I knew Fix You off this album by name. I think there was one other song that I had heard before, but I just didn't recognize before listening to it. This one is the longest album of theirs, and Chris Martin, I read all the Apple Music descriptions for each album, and Chris Martin actually said that he would go back and trim some of the fat off this album, which I definitely agree with. And this was the album where there's actually supposed to have Johnny Cash on it, and then he passed away, which he would have been their first feature, which I think is pretty cool and interesting. And that's why they had their last song on it, Till Kingdom Come, is a bit country-ish, and I picked up on that, and then I read in the Apple Music wiki, not Apple Music wiki, in the Apple Music notes about the album, that he was supposed to be on it, so that made sense. Which also is interesting because thematically it's about a man at the end of his life, which I think is interesting thing to sing about. There are some songs on here that work well for me, some others are just, you know, fine or okay. I mean, I really like, of course, Fix You, Talk, Speed of Sound, and honestly, just more the first part of the album, the first half. The second half, I think, is a bit too drawn out, and I don't like as much. I think my least favorite here is Swallowed in the Sea, and that is, I think, a lot because of the rhyme scheme. It's like rhyme, 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 break, rhyme, 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 break, rhyme, 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 break, and I didn't like that. There's just also the song wasn't very interesting to me in general. And what's interesting is I really liked the lyrical progression from their debut album to Or Split to the Head, but here I think they actually took maybe a bit step back. I just really wasn't, it felt like the lyrics were a bit cut and dry and very, just on the nose. Like for Twisted Logic, for example, like, it was just basically just overtly being like, go forwards, just go backwards, go forward to go, no, sorry. My Twisted Logic. Go backwards to go forwards. And it's like, okay, yeah, well I think it's one of those things where I would have appreciated a bit more show than tell in this album. Could just be me. It is still a good album though. I did enjoy it more than Mew Music or Music of Spears. So I'll give it that. Next I listened to Everyday Life. This album, I don't know if I was on the end of my ropes at this point in my Coldplay listening, but man, I didn't know anything about this album. I didn't know it existed at all. I never saw it before in my life. But honestly, it was a bit more promising to begin with. I did like their use of strings in the opening song. There's a really cool, I don't know if it was a mandolin, but kind of sounded like that, or just a really cool acoustic guitar in Church, which is the second song on the album. And honestly, like Trouble in Town, that had a really cool guitar in it. And this album is actually divided up into 2 parts, but it's in one album. So there's 8 songs. There's 8 songs. I can do math. There's 8 songs on the first part of the album. And once it gets to the last few on that first part, I was like, okay, whatever. There was this one song called, I don't know what it's supposed to stand for, but it's called WOTW/POTP. And I like that birds from the last song led into this, and that it sounds like Chris Martin is just literally like sitting somewhere just to himself, like singing to himself, like playing a guitar. And I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a really cool idea for a song, and I really liked that. And I think it also included, like, it wasn't perfect, like it wasn't polished in a way that you would think a typical song would be. And this was a bit shorter, so it was a bit interlude-ish, but I really enjoyed it on the album. And then we got to the second part, where there is another 8 songs on it. And I hated this. I really did not like this at all. I mean, I hated Orphans. That sounds bad out of context. But yeah. There's all these songs, you could get rid of them. I did not like any of these in the second half. Everyday Life, which is the album title and the closing song on this album. I mean, it's like, the lyrics are like, everyone, blah, blah, blah. Everyone, blah, blah, blah. Everyone, blah, blah. But it's not done, like, interestingly. It's not interesting. I can't appreciate that he wants to be influenced by other cultures and include those cultures in some way in his songs. I think cosmopolitanism is very important, and I do appreciate that about the band. And I don't know if it's the whole band does this, but Chris Martin especially seems like the guy who's really into this. But I really did not like it. But then we have Viva La Vida, or Death and All of His Friends. I love this album. I knew, of course, Viva La Vida before, and I anticipated really liking this album, and I did. I also realized this came out on my birthday. I was 5 when it came out. Oh, anyways. I like the Life in Technicolor as the intro, it actually felt like it was building something connected to the album, and it did. They brought back the sound in the last track, Death and All His Friends. I love that song. And this whole album is just pretty cohesive, and even though there are some long songs on here, Yes is 7 minutes, and Death and All His Friends are 7 minutes or 6 minutes too. And Violet Hill, I believe, is also pretty long. It's still, like, it's not boring, it's still interesting. And again, this is also, I believe, like 42, 44 minutes, something like that. And I mean, that run with Yes, and then into Viva La Vida, and then Violet Hill, and then Strawberry Swing, which then goes into Death and All His Friends, which is an amazing closer. I mean, that is just amazing, and I really enjoy it. And I think that this really is peak Coldplay, in my opinion. I think it's really where they reach, I think it's really when they reach new heights with their storytelling. I mean, this medieval imagery and also religious imagery as well. I'm kind of a sucker for that, so that might also be my own bit of bias. But I really like that. And then also following this theme of like self-destruction and destruction, but not wanting to succumb to death and all of his friends. I mean, it has just such bangers. I mean, Strawberry Swing, I love the guitar on that. And just really great production. While also maintaining, you know, the guitar, bass, and everything, you know, I think that what made Coldplay to begin with in their earlier albums. Just really evolving in their sound. And I think this was their peak. I truly think this was their peak evolution. I mentioned Death and All His Friends were in 7/4. I like that Yes was in 3/4. I like when artists or bands play with timings in their songs. I think it just makes it that much more interesting. Then we get into A Head Full of Dreams, and going into this, I knew Him for the Weekend, Adventure of a Lifetime, and that's it. Those were, I think, the two singles on it from it, or there were at least the two popular songs from it. And I love those songs, especially Him for the Weekend. I love Beyonce on it. It's just so fun. I like it. And I know that this isn't, I guess, you know, people would say, like, not Coldplay, not, you know, like the original sound. But it's clear that they're experimenting with a dancey 80s sound. That's obviously what, I mean, A Head Full of Dreams, which is the opening title track, very much puts out there. Dancey, 80s. I mean, that song itself, it's a pretty good song. It's not very memorable, but, you know, it does a job to set forth what, you know, they want you to get from the album. Again, though, some of these lyrics, I'm like, I'm scratching my head. Like, what does this mean? Like, in the second song on the album called Birds, I was like, the lyrics, like, some of these lyrics are questionable. One of them just says, guilty of nothing but geography. And another is, in this world so cruel, I think you're so cool. Which, I mean, that makes sense. I get what they're saying, but it's just corny. And Fool's Gold Thunder. Maybe I'm just uneducated and I don't know what, like, these things mean, but, like... Anyways. Oh yeah, another one. In Everglow. Like an eagle you circled in a perfect purple. What? Do eagles circle in a perfect like, what does that mean? But when I'm cold in a water rolled salt. I don't get it. Like, some of these lyrics I really don't get. Also, like I mentioned, I really liked Him for the Weekend and Adventure of a Lifetime. Some of the other ones, nothing, like, those were, like I mentioned before in Worship Blood to the Head. The Scientist and Clocks are great songs, but some other songs on there, could stand on their own, even without those two in the album. But this one, you need Him for the Weekend and Adventure of a Lifetime, because otherwise it's just it's pretty mid album otherwise. I mean, those are just obviously the standouts, and nothing really comes that close to it quality-wise. And I think part of that is because the other songs lose dynamic. Like, they don't have that same dynamic that those other two have, and I think that's really what made them successful. It made them more interesting. Tuvlo is featured on a song called Fun, and I really don't like it. I think she's also not in it as much as maybe, like, she could have been. It's just a decent album. I think they kind of lose the thread of the dancey hit that maybe they were trying to go for. I think they weren't consistent enough in it to make this more of an interesting album. And now we have, and I hope I say this right, I've said this, practiced saying this so many times, but Milo Xyloto. And I knew Princess of China and Paradise, obviously, going into this. And again, I expected this to be a bit more experimental, but not in the same way as Him for the Weekend, in that dance pop, but in a more electronic way. Something that hurt this album for me was reading the Apple Music notes and finding out that it's supposed to be placed on a fictional planet of Silencia and telling the tale of a war against sound and color. That is what Chris Martin said himself. If he didn't say that, I wouldn't have gotten any of this. And I think if you're making music with the intention of telling this story or having this as your backdrop, the fact that can't pick up on that, I don't think that's good. And that honestly, that hurt it a bit for me. That do some points. Because then, what's the point? Because, for example, Paradise, I mean, now I can imagine, okay, maybe this, like, person in Paradise, like, the person in the song Paradise, she's on this planet and she's dreaming of, you know, a world with sound and color, right? But you don't get that from the song. Now that I know this, I can apply it to the song. I'm like, okay, she wants to get out of this war-torn planet. But I just thought that song was about a girl who was depressed. Anyway, so that kind of hurt it for me. Obviously, the best songs on the album are Paradise and Princess of China. I do really like Princess of China. So this is their first feature that they had. None of the other songs are too interesting to me. What caught me was that in Hurts Like Heaven, he says heart as a weapon, which because I just listened to him for the weekend, in this song, Army of One, he says that exact same thing. So I was wondering if, I was like, oh, was that an intentional in him, not Him for the Weekend, A Head Full of Dreams. Was that intentionally meant to call back this? I don't know, I picked that up. I'm picking things up. But some of the songs I really didn't like the production on. For example, Up in Flames, which is closer to the end of the album, there's like a metronome sound of a snare or something, and it is way too loud in front in the production. I don't know why. I hate it. Like, I hated it. I was like, why is this so pushed to the front with, like, the vocals and everything? It was so loud. It was jarring. So some of the production choices I was a bit questionable about. Like Major Minus. There was some of the vocal production even where I was like, why does it sound like this? Like, this just sounds a little weird. I did like Every Teardrop is a Waterfall. I thought that was another good one. I like the idea, like, I'd rather be a comma than a full stop. And I think this aided a bit more in this whole revolution happening on this fictional planet. Though again, I didn't really get any of that vibe. It feels like they moved away from that experimental techno sound that was happening more in the first half of the album, or in certain songs, and then in other songs just kind of didn't do all that, and it just felt just a bit boring. And it sounded like Coldplay, but there wasn't really anything to it. But overall, it was still a decent album.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I 100% forgot to talk about Ghost Stories. That clues you into my feelings about the album. I think their goal from reading their Apple Music report on the album, it was to make a more chilled, laid-back album, and I certainly think they accomplished that in a way. I think it was very boring, and really the only notable track is A Sky Full of Stars. See you. Anyways, that song's a banger, but really everything else is just forgettable, and like I said, maybe that's more what they were going for, but yeah. I also forgot to include it in the rankings, by the way. I will edit that, though.
So, for my final ranking of Coldplay's discography, we go 1, Viva La Vida, 2, A Rush Blood to the Head, 3, Parachutes, 4, X and Y, 5, Milo Xyloto, 6 A Head Full of Dreams, 7 Moon Music, 8 Everyday Life, and 9 Music of the Spheres. So, did I answer my question? Did Coldplay get worse? Honestly, it's interesting because thematically they haven't changed a lot, you know? And, oh my god, I see a cat. Like, they honestly haven't changed a lot thematically. And I don't know, I guess in the course of doing this and seeing Chris Martin, I watched some of their performances, just kind of their overall aesthetic. I think honestly what they're doing now makes sense aesthetic wise. Maybe not execution, because I don't know why they do some of these immense vocal processing on Chris Martin when he is an amazing singer. But you know, it does seem like this is what they want to do. I guess to answer a question of mine, it doesn't feel like so much that they're selling out as they'd like to just try different things. You know, even as early like X and Y, that was trying something a bit different. I think that they totally didn't like how it came out, but it was a bit different. Malizado, that seemed like something that was a bit different, experimenting with the story of the planet. Viva La Vida, I mean, that's a lot of it is just very fiction, and his whole Music of the Spheres and everything. So it seems authentic. It seems pretty authentic to them, even if it musically steers away. It seems a bit true to them. I do prefer their older music. Like I said, Viva La Vida was my favorite, but I do appreciate that even if I don't like their newer music, it seems like there's effort. It seems like there is story behind it. I mean, Chris Martin, and I'm sure the rest of the band, but Chris Martin's just always the one that's cited, like, does seem very intentional about the collaborations, about certain aesthetics that he's pulling from. Like I said, Music of the Spheres turned out that was an actual person. So I do appreciate that about the music. I'm thinking about deep diving. Bruno Mars next.